Hello, I'm Quentin Hardy and I have the pleasure of being your host for today. Thank you for joining us for this digital event. Let's be clear. No one in today's highly connected world is exempt from security threats, whether their sensitive data is on-prem or in the cloud. In this digital event, we'll look at how security is approached more effectively in the cloud and what that can mean for your business. Before we get started, I want to remind you that this is an interactive session and we encourage you to get involved in today's conversation. If you have any questions during the show, you can post on the Q&A section below, and we have Googlers around the world answering them live. A common question our customers ask is, how do we evolve from our traditional security models to cloud models, and how does that work? Over the next 40 minutes, we'll aim to answer exactly that in 4 key segments. In a minute, we'll look at the security landscape and discuss the unique benefits of cloud security with special guests Renee Murphy, Principal Analyst for Security and Risk at Forrester, and Ben McCormick, Vice President of Operations at our customer Evernote. Secondly, I'll speak to Suzanne Fry, Director of Security, Trust, and Privacy at Google Cloud, who will take a deeper dive into how we securely process and manage your most precious asset, your data. Following this, Matthew O'Connor, a Senior Security Product Manager at Google, will demonstrate exactly how Google's Cloud is uniquely positioned to mitigate 4 of today's most damaging cyber threats, from DDoS attacks to phishing. Finally, I'll be joined by Adam Geller, Vice President of Product Management at Palo Alto Networks, plus Ming Chang, Cloud Security Awareness Lead at SAP, and Vineet Bond, Technology Partners Lead at Google, to take a deeper look at some of the ways you can work with our technology partners to complement our core offerings and take your existing controls into the cloud. Let's get started. I'd like to welcome our special guests, Renee Murphy, Principal Analyst for Security and Risk at Forrester, and Ben McCormick, Vice President of Operations at Evernote. Renee, can you tell us a little bit about your work at Forrester on security in the enterprise and how cloud figures into that?
Yeah, so I work at Forrester as a principal analyst in governance, risk, and compliance. So I work with chief information security officers on the risk question about the cloud. And from a security perspective, I'll say that that's usually the very first question they have. How secure is the cloud? Are they going to be responsible for, my problems? Mm-hmm. The first thing you try to do is tell them, listen, take any cloud best practice, go into your own data center and see if you'll pass that. And they'll come back and tell me, there's no way we can do this. I'm like, right, well then.
Not much left to talk about.
Right, like someone else can do it better. You might want to do it. So I think that's how they first come to the question, like, what am I really giving up? And I say, you're not giving up anything except, the spinning disk in your space. That's all you're giving up. You're actually enhancing your security. You're enhancing your availability. What makes cloud more effective is you can hire people I can't hire. You can have, huge data centers that I can't have.
Me being all of Google.
All of Google.
Okay.
You can do that, right?
Right.
You can do it in a way I can't. And listen, the more of us that go to the cloud, the better you're going to get at it. And the better you get at it, the better I'm going to be at it. And I think at the end of the day, if you're in the business of doing anything other than managing data centers, then why are you managing the data center?
Ben, let me bring you in. Last year you did migrate your data centers over to Google Cloud. Tell us a little bit about that experience. Does the security side of that mirror what Renee is talking about, or did you have other interests and concerns?
I'd say broadly, yes. For us, it was about allowing our teams to focus on what was important to our end customers. We've got hundreds of millions of users who we are helping collect information, retrieve information, and help them be more efficient. Being an expert in running a physical data center doesn't directly support that. So for us, it was about allowing our technical teams, and you're right, you move to cloud, you do not get rid of your technical team.
Nope.
Or if you do, you're going to realize it's a mistake really quickly.
Yeah.
There are things you're doing in the physical data center that will be replaced in the cloud. You need to become an expert at the cloud provider's control plane, et cetera, et cetera. But for us, it was about focusing our company and our staff on things that were important to our users, and also allowing our development teams and software engineers to move a lot faster. So for us, the rate of change and the rate of innovation in the cloud space is way faster than we can ever achieve.
That's the proposition in cloud, that it automates a lot of the cruft work. You don't pull cable anymore. You don't destroy hard drive anymore. You outsource all that to another provider in a large centralized area. And developers can move faster.
Yep.
They have better tools. They can scale. Ultimately, security questions are about having your business relationships threatened. and you must have had security questions going in. What were they like, and how were they best addressed?
So for us, I think it was twofold. We initially started with our standard security questionnaires, and we went through those. And then what our security team actually did was paused a couple of months in and actually started risk modeling or threat modeling. What were the risks that we'll be looking at in cloud? The risk model is not, is the cloud provider going to lose a hard drive? The risk model is what happens if you lose effectively your root password in the cloud account, in your cloud account. So we went through our standard process first. We learned from that in the first cycle, and then we updated our threat modeling and then re-asked the questions to Google and re-engaged. And I think the other thing, we just went through a period of learning that you have to go to cloud means you've got to trust somebody.
Is there some kind of corollary where security is concerned? Are the security teams working in different ways on more valuable stuff?
It's broadly exactly the same. So the security team and the legal teams have still got to verify all of the certifications with the provider. You've got to go through the security certifications, the questionnaires. None of that changes. But what the security team is not having to do is audit, we use this example, physical hard drive destruction. They're not having to audit physical hard drive destruction logs every quarter. And for us, the question becomes, if they're not doing that, what can they be spending their time on? They can spend more time on securing the application, more time helping our developers write more secure code, more time chasing people that are trying to hack our application, not trying to hack our physical data centers. So for us, I think in the security side as well, it allows them to move up the stack and focus on things that are more important to our customers. And ultimately, that's what it's about. It's about your customers. It's not about the running physical data centers. That's how we saw it.
You're offering your team more interesting and challenging work. It is a new landscape. What do you wish you'd known beforehand about security specifically?
For us, there hasn't really been. There's been no big surprises on the security side. We did all of our due diligence up front. Our security team and our legal team spent a lot of time with the Google teams, understanding the nuances of cloud. What did it provide? What didn't it provide? The big surprise for us has been how quickly our software engineers embrace the cloud. And in some ways, we're having to play catch up.
It's interesting you say this, because you're telling me that the IT teams stay in place, security stays in place, they're involved in different work, so there's some change management involved. And you see a competitive differentiator for the enterprise in going to cloud. What was that about?
I think you've got to look at the macro picture. We're losing the battle. Breaches are getting larger and larger. Threat actors are getting more and more sophisticated. And as an industry, I'm not sure we're actually winning that battle. But if you can focus less on some of the security layers and allow your cloud provider who has scale, who can apply automation, who can apply, we hope in the future, machine learning to some of those things, it frees up security professionals to focus on our application security. And I think it's one of the ways that we may start stemming the tide of losing the battle against hacks.
And Renee, you speak to many businesses. How does security figure in for most of them as becoming some sort of competitive differentiator?
What we're trying to manage, businesses, when they talk to me, they're trying to manage reputational risk, right? And so what do you end up with after a breach? You have damaged reputation, right? And so everybody's trying to control that. And actually, it's how they get funding these days. We don't talk about threat and vulnerabilities anymore. We talk about the impact to the business reputation. Like, what are we going to be labeled, another company who can't seem to keep their data together, right?
Will there be a massive fine?
Well, and will there be a massive fine? Yeah, that's not even funny anymore. So, we can't ignore it. So I think from a differentiator perspective, that if you are spending your time, like Ben said, working on other things, securing your application, making better code, having security deployed somewhere else so that they can be meaningful, I think that's all part of being, a differentiator, a competitive differentiator.
And of course, the customers are also thinking, how's this going to change my life? And so for a security engineer, when you talk about cloud security and how pervasive or full stack or depth of hardware, software, security integration, whatever, what are they thinking about what they're going to do next if that part of their job goes away.
Yeah, see, that's it. We spend a lot of time telling them we need to figure out a way to get you out of the day-to-day stuff of security, looking at patching, looking at incidences, trying to figure out if the threat and vulnerability management system is giving us false positives. So for me, it's all about managing that third party, having a partnership, understanding who's responsible for what, negotiating that ahead of time, right? In a breach, who notifies who of what? In a security incident, how are we going to communicate that? Because you may be communicating to me, but I need to communicate to an entire organization. So we need to be in sync with that. We need to negotiate change management. We need to negotiate incident management. If I'm in a heavily regulated industry and you're making infrastructure changes, I have to know.
So transparency is available. Exploit it. Use it as much as you can.
Absolutely do it. And if you're in a heavily regulated industry, have one conversation with the regulators before you go down this road to understand their expectations. And if you have internal audit, have them involved.
The landscape has changed. And I think the next generation of IT professionals, security professionals, need to be cloud ready. They need to be less thinking about how do I secure a router, and more thinking about how do I secure my cloud account, how do I secure my keys, and continue on that journey. So I think it's a journey up the stack for all of us. When I started in the industry, we used to argue about what physical network card to put in a server.
Yeah.
We did. It was an argument. It took you a month of time to discuss what version of card you would put in. We're constantly moving up the stack, and it's only going to continue, and it's going to move faster and faster.
And Ben, what do you see your security teams working on a year or two from now?
So what we're trying to assess is how far can we go down the route of serverless architectures, not worrying about infrastructure, continuing to abstract further and further away from the underlying infrastructure. We're not sure it's quite there yet, but we know it's coming very, very quickly. We want to be ready to embrace that.
A more integrated and automated stack, basically.
Basically, yeah, embracing things like cloud functions, and embracing those higher value services. Like Renee said it, like why worry about securing the container? Worry about securing the code. Worry about writing secure code. So for us, it's a continual abstraction. It's never going to stop, and it's only going to get faster.
What does the future hold for security? What do you see happening next? What do you think businesses should be thinking about?
Well, I think businesses should be thinking about getting comfortable with the idea that you don't need to manage this yourself. I think we should see this as fully outsourced from a security perspective between the managed security service providers or cloud providers. I think we as organizations should get out of that business. We shouldn't be in the business of securing data. We should have companies that are very good at securing data. We should share that risk with them, right? We should do that because you hired all the best people that I can't afford, right? You hired all the best people that I can't afford, so I may as well have you manage that for me.
Right.
And listen, if I'm in the business of doing research, should I be in the business of running a data center? Again, no, I shouldn't be, right? Other people are better at it.
Talk to the provider, get a roadmap for what's going to get automated next, and think about the value-added security layer you might put on top of that. It's great advice. Thank you both, Renee and Ben, for joining us. We're now going to head over to the UK to hear from security company Ravelin about how they're approaching security at scale.
My name's Leonard Austin, and I'm the CTO at Ravelin. Ravelin is a fraud detection company. We specialize in detecting credit card fraud. When a customer tries to buy something from one of our merchants, the merchant will then stream us all of that data, and we will use a load of machine learning behind the scenes to try and analyze transactions and make predictions around whether that user is a genuine user or a fraudulent user. We consume a huge quantity of data through our API. It's not just our clients' real-time data, but it's also all of their historic data as well. It's everything from transactions to customers' orders, along with all of their transaction history and potentially location data as well. That's typically terabytes of data per client. Security is really important for us because our clients are trusting us with all of their data. So we go to extraordinary lengths to ensure that the data that we hold is encrypted and securer than closed source projects. Cloud security for us is better than on-prem. There's a lot of aspects to on-prem that we just can't really facilitate, and Google can. So on-prem has the problem of having to manage your own security. If we had a warehouse of racks and data centers, we'd have to protect that ourselves. With the cloud, we don't have to do that. So all of that is outsourced to Google. Above and beyond that, The actual cloud itself and the way that Google structures the file system means that one file isn't stored on one computer, it's stored across multiple disks, which means even if someone was able to get access to a particular disk, a physical access, they wouldn't actually be able to get any data from that. We migrated from another cloud provider to GCP, and the decision to move to GCP wasn't taken lightly, and we did a lot of evaluation of GCP before deciding to make the move. One of the major factors that made us think that it was the right thing to do, we could work with our account manager and easily get access to the documentation to prove to our auditors that GCP was secure and it was up to scratch. The other thing that we were able to do is work closely with the KMS team, and working with those guys you could really see that there was a focus and a roadmap that really took security to the next level. There's a number of services that GCP offer that we couldn't get elsewhere. And examples like the identity-aware proxy, which you can't get anywhere else, and encryption at rest by default, but also the further step that enables us to supply encryption keys to Google so that Google can't even unencrypt the data if they wanted to. The identity-aware proxy for us is a really nice service because it basically enables us to protect all of our internal dashboards without having the complicated setup of a VPN and having to get our users to install VPN clients, install credentials, have two-factor auth. It's all baked into the identity-aware proxy. And because we're users of Google App Engine, it just means that there's no additional setup for anyone within the company. So those are all really strong factors that suggest that Google really cares about security, and it enables us to trust Google with all of our data.
I'm here with Suzanne Fry, Director of Security, Trust, and Privacy at Google Cloud. She's responsible for ensuring we gain our customers' trust through extensive transparency, visibility, and controls. Suzanne, thanks for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you.
So, why should businesses trust Google Cloud? What kind of commitments do we make that protects them?
Google was born in the cloud, and we've been cloud native since day one. Now, what does that mean? That means that we've thought about security and privacy and how we build and architect our data centers, servers, networks, devices, and applications. It's allowed us sort of to move at the speed of the world since day one and with respect to security and privacy threats. And I think that's super important for folks to understand. We have optimized for the cloud.
And how does that get reflected in the commitments we make?
Absolutely. So we put our money where our mouth is. We put all of our commitments to security and privacy in contract. These are binding documents, as you know, so that customers can feel comfortable knowing that we are committed to their security and privacy.
Now, the customers still know us very much as a consumer company. Strong brand, very strong consumer presence, and enterprise customers sometimes have a few questions around that. Can you give me some clarity on the differences and what exactly happens to enterprise data, for example?
Mm-hmm. So going back to the cloud native approach that we've taken, we've built a tremendous business. In fact, there's 7 businesses at Google with over 1 billion consumer users apiece. Mm-hmm. And just look at that track record standalone. We bring all of the power of that track record to our enterprise customers and even more. We talked about contracts, but we also, commit to not scanning your data for advertising. We commit that you can take your data with you. We commit that you have a right to understand where your data is being stored, and your IP will belong to you.
And earlier when I was talking with Dan and Renee, we talked about transparency because cloud relationships aren't like standard packaged enterprise software relationships. We don't sell and leave. Mm-hmm. We have to kind of earn it and win it on this rolling basis. And also keep people informed around new features, what's coming up in the product side.
Yeah.
And they were saying that the change management and the training involved makes transparency very important and communications important. From Google's perspective, why is transparency important?
Well, you put yourself in the shoes of any CIO or CISO who's making a decision to move from on-premise to the cloud or even another cloud provider to ours. And you really have to understand, how am I going to know I am safe and secure? We believe we earn trust through transparency. Knowing what's happening to your data at any given time, super critical for earning that trust.
Security is a sense that you control your environment. right?
Yeah.
The transparency means you can see
Yeah.
and control as much as possible.
True.
That's kind of
Yeah.
the idea behind that, I guess. So finally, what are 3 things you'd like viewers to take from this session?
Well, we've touched on all 3 in some capacity. For example, pillar number 1 is compliance. We're committed to our customers' compliance. Examples being things like GDPR and FedRAMP. We have to be ahead of the curve with respect to global compliance regimes, and we recognize, our compliance is our customers' compliance. 2, we're committed to transparency, trust through transparency, and enabling customers to understand what we're doing with their data. And thirdly, we're committed to control. You are in control of your data. And not only with portability and things like that, but also the ability to turn off services or control the security of your devices or understand, which executives in your organization should have a security key and implement and enforce that at scale. So those are the 3 things: compliance, transparency, and control.
Suzanne, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, no one in today's highly connected world is exempt from security threats like phishing, ransomware, or denial of service attacks, and certainly not Google. We see every type of attack multiple times a day, and it's taught us a lot. Here's Matthew O'Connor, Senior Product Manager for Security at Google Cloud, to walk us through exactly how we deal with some of today's biggest cybersecurity threats.
Thank you, Quentin. Defending the world's largest network against constantly evolving cyber threats has driven us to develop advanced tools to help keep us and our customers ahead. I'm going to go into detail on 4 ways we can help defend your business critical data and applications from some of today's biggest security threats. Let's start with ransomware. Recent Google research shows cyber thieves have made at least $25 million from ransomware in the last 2 years, and this is expected to grow. To protect ourselves and our customers from this and other types of malware, we've built multiple layers of protection, most of which are automated and available to our customers by default. First, our global visibility into malicious sites and content makes detection highly effective. If you're a Gmail user, we prevent thousands of malicious attachments from ever reaching inboxes. If something does reach your inbox, Google Safe Browsing in our Chrome browser protects users by identifying dangerous links in email and showing warnings if users click on them. This stops access to any websites which are known to distribute malware. If you've ever been blocked from a site like this, you've experienced safe browsing at work. Every minute of the day, we find and label another malware site and warn users of suspected malware hundreds of times. In Google Drive, all files undergo a malware scan prior to any download or sharing. Drive also stores files in non-executable formats, which prevent ransomware from propagating. Our Chrome operating system continually updates automatically, ensuring it's highly resistant to malware compromise. Applications are sandboxed to prevent harm to the host machine. Often these features remove any need for anti-malware or antivirus software. And at the mobile device level, every single day we check the health of over 400 million Android devices and scan over 6 billion mobile applications downloaded to Android phones to make sure they're not infected. Safe Browsing protects over 2 billion mobile phones, laptops, tablets, and other devices which use Google software. Now let's look at denial of service attacks. A distributed denial of service attack, or DDoS attack, is an attempt to make an online service unavailable by overwhelming it with traffic from multiple sources. They can have a huge impact if businesses aren't adequately prepared. As a Google Cloud customer, you are protected by default to this type of attack, as the scale of our infrastructure enables us to simply absorb many of them. For context, a huge attack last year had a strength of around 1 terabit per second. The whole internet has a bisection bandwidth of 200 terabits per second. Now, when you compare this to a single Google data center, which has a bisection bandwidth of 1,300 terabits per second, you can see we have built-in level of internal capacity, multiple times that of any traffic load we anticipate. When there is an attack, we have time to isolate it and address it. But we don't stop there. In Google Cloud Platform, customers benefit directly from our central DOS mitigation service that provides an additional multi-tier, multi-layer protections and further reduces the risk to services running behind our Google front ends. When the system detects an attack is taking place, it can configure load balancers to drop or throttle traffic associated with the attack. So what do we do to prevent data breaches? It's critical to know where sensitive data is. but that can be difficult in complex systems. At Google, we encrypt our customers' data in different ways, depending upon what the data is doing, and all of this happens by default with no user action required. Data is potentially vulnerable to unauthorized access as it travels across the internet or within networks. Because it's linked to most ISPs in the world, Google's private global network helps to improve the security of data in transit by limiting the hops across the public internet. Any data traveling from a customer's device to Google's cloud is protected using HTTPS or TLS, limiting opportunities for traffic to be intercepted. In fact, Google was the first major cloud provider to enable this by default. At Google, we encrypt our customers' data in different ways depending upon what the data is doing, whether it is stored in a database or in transit to and from Google. It all happens by default with no user action required. Data is encrypted at the hardware layer inside of our data center. That way, it can only be decrypted in our cloud on another verified Google machine. When it's stored, data is broken up into numerous different shards and sent to different servers. This guards against hackers and is good for disaster recovery and business continuity, ensuring against natural disasters, unplanned downtimes, or equipment failures. When you call up a document in Google Drive, for example, the document is recalled from all of its storage points, decrypted, and reassembled in the blink of an eye. Additionally, as customers, you have the option of managing encryption keys with our Cloud Key Management service, or even supplying your own encryption keys if you're looking for additional granular levels of control. Data loss prevention is an effective technology to ensure that sensitive data doesn't leave the organization or get accessed by people that it's not intended for. In Google Cloud Platform and G Suite, users can find and secure sensitive content, minimize what data they collect, and implement data governance policies. Our DLP API helps you to manage and run analytics on your cloud data without introducing additional risk to your organization. It provides fast, scalable classification and optional redaction for over 40 sensitive data types, like credit card numbers, names, passport numbers, and more. As you can see here, it can be used to automatically classify or redact sensitive data from a text stream before you write it to disk, generate logs, or perform analysis on it. Finally, let's look at an attack that many organizations are concerned about: phishing. According to the 2017 Verizon Data Breach Investigations Report, 90% of all incidents and breaches that involve social actions by external actors include phishing. Everyone is overwhelmed with email, and it just takes one person to hurriedly click on a rogue message to have a phishing incident. If you've ever seen an email that looks like this, you'll know what I'm talking about. Our first defense is to prevent phishing emails from ever reaching people. Gmail filtering blocks the majority of malicious email, and our global visibility across users makes this visibility highly effective. Gmail also restricts the use of file types that carry a high potential for security risks, even inside a compressed file. If a malicious link gets through, the next layer of protection is safe browsing in Chrome, which prevents users from visiting known phishing websites where their credentials can be stolen or malware installed on their device. Then, even if an attacker manages to gain the credentials they were looking for, such as a username and password, we provide two-factor verification and security keys, which make the use of compromised credentials extremely difficult. Instead of entering a unique code as a second factor at sign-in, Security Keys sends us cryptographic proof that users on a legitimate Google site and that they have their security keys with them. A physical action is required, and since most hijackers are remote, their efforts can be thwarted because they cannot get possession of the security key. To increase control further, businesses can take advantage of security key enforcement, which allows Google Cloud administrators to enable two-step verification that forces users to use security keys as the second factor. Security keys work with Google accounts at no charge, but you'll need to buy a compatible USB device directly from a U2F participating vendor. Finally, if a Chromebook somehow gets compromised as a result of a phishing attack, it can quickly and easily be restored to a known good state. As you can see, we're constantly innovating for our customers to help prevent compromises all across the stack. Compared to legacy security approaches, using Google Cloud means that typical deployment is faster and scale much more easily. Automation is easier, functionality evolves and improves more quickly, and often the cost of acquisition is lower. Thank you for watching. Back to you, Quentin.
Many businesses have invested large amounts of time and money in on-premise security policies and controls. When you work with our open ecosystem of technology partners, you're able to take your existing controls into the cloud and mitigate threats more effectively. To discuss this further, I have with me Vineet Bond, Head of Security Technology Partnerships at Google Cloud, Adam Geller, Vice President of Product Management at Palo Alto Networks, and Ming Chang, Cloud Security Awareness Lead at SAP. Thanks, fellas, for coming.
Thank you.
Vineet, why don't you talk a little bit about Google Cloud's philosophy when it comes to partnering technology partners in security?
Sure. Google's philosophy is to create an open ecosystem of partners so we can meet customers where they are in their journey to migration in cloud. So customers would have a choice of using Google technology and combine that with best-of-breed security partnerships. So it will also help in Google and partners working closer together in the future to create the next generation of security products that will be a lot more easier and automated than what customers are used to having today.
Okay, so an easier journey in the future. Meet them where they are, take them forward. Adam, as one of the partners in the ecosystem, but also a strong leader in security for many years, talk a little bit about how customers are viewing the cloud and how it might have been changing over the past couple of years.
Sure. So when a lot of our customers started making the cloud journey, to be honest, security wasn't their top priority. Their major focus was speed and time to market for the applications they were building, and to a lesser extent, possibility of maybe cost savings for a different method for deploying their applications. But those apps really were focused typically on development and test workloads. So the emphasis from a security standpoint was a little bit lower. Fast forward to where we are today, and there's no question the cloud is used for very advanced production workloads with high quality and very sensitive data. So as you'd expect, what's moved along with that is the emphasis on enterprise class security and really bringing along the concepts that were critical in an enterprise data center, making sure those can still be applied in the cloud, but now apply them in a different way based on the capabilities of the cloud environment.
Let me stop you there and talk a bit about what the key concepts would be and how they're reflected in products or services we're offering.
Sure. So fundamentally, if your objective as an organization is to prevent a successful attack, you need to think about four things. You need to be able to have full visibility, and we're talking mostly about network security right now, but this really applies broadly across the security landscape for an organization. So it's four things. It's complete visibility, it's the capability to reduce an attack surface area to a meaningful scope of work, it's to be able to successfully prevent any known attack. You should be able to prevent it outright so you don't have to think about it. And then for things that are truly unique and unknown or novel, they've never been seen before, you need to be able to detect and prevent it very quickly and turn that time around so that it becomes something that you've known already and then you can deal with.
Okay, and so those four areas travel with the customer, those concepts, those practices travel with the customer into the cloud. How do things change? The number of touch points, the level of compute, and how do you speak to that in the products and services you're offering?
Sure. So when we work with Google Cloud Platform, it's the application of those four principles. They change because the environment necessarily is different than what the enterprise controls themselves in their traditional data center. So in Google, we have the opportunity to integrate in from a networking standpoint differently, from a context sharing, information that we learn that we can share with the cloud platform and what the cloud platform can share with us. And that all adds up to a much more automated and scalable solution that looks very different operationally from what people have done traditionally in their data centers.
Now, Ming, let me turn to you because SAP has relationships going back years and in some cases decades with thousands of companies around the world, really reshaping the way things are manufactured, finance, distribution of goods, all sorts of things. How are the customers viewing security in the cloud and the move to the cloud, particularly since we've started this deep relationship with Google in the past year?
Yeah. Security is definitely the top of the concern, but also how to manage the security risks, as well as meet the regulatory requirements. And to be in a competitive market, to succeed, customer has the choice to move to cloud, which is the best choice that they have about the scalability, the flexibility, as well as the cost and the security embedded to it.
What is the priority they have where security is concerned? Protection of data, threat vector, changing contexts or styles of work? What do you see?
Sure. Definitely the security, the application security, the platform that runs need to be secure, the visibility that they need to have to manage those security, as well as how are they going to meet the regulatory requirements. They need to provide reports requirements, visibility to whoever they need to respond to.
I want to ask you all a little bit about the future, and I'll start with you, Ming. Where do you see the partnership going in terms of what SAP wants to deliver to its customers?
Sure. The partnership is great. SAP and Google are able to create a data custodian solution which can provide the customer ability to set up the controls that they need as well as the visibility. With the Google's highly secure public cloud and SAP's knowledge and experience on managing the business processes, we can make the customers exceed when they are in the competitive environment.
Okay. Adam?
So where I see this going is an evolution from sort of the basic integrations and basic starting point of how do I do something similar to what I had in my enterprise data center to how I do it much more natively and much more integrated in with the fabric that Google Cloud Platform is providing. And that typically will hit in areas of automation and scale again. And it's automation from the deployment standpoint and infrastructure, but also then the automation on how I process and respond to actual security events and alerts.
And Vineet, where do you see partnership going inside Google Cloud?
So our vision is to work along with best-of-breed partners like SAP and Palo Alto and make security as a driver for migration to the cloud. So as companies are evaluating their migration to the cloud, they can see security posture in the cloud that Google has developed with their own technology combined with best-of-breed partners is so much better than what they could get in an on-premise deployment.
Very helpful. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
From ransomware to data compromise, cybersecurity is a complex space, and we do not expect the problems to end. Today, we have demonstrated just a few of the ways we secure Google Cloud, taking pressure off our customers to do everything themselves. While some still hesitate in the move to cloud computing, we believe organizations significantly improve their security in the new world, far better than anything they see in older systems. Continuing reports of large-scale attacks on these legacy systems affirms that view. We are committed to making cloud-based computing with the greatest possible benefits for education, business, government, and our personal lives. Security is a critical element of that, one we work on every minute around the world. If you'd like to talk to one of our Google security experts, please let us know. Just visit google.com/cloud and look for the Work With Us button. And don't worry if you missed anything. This video will be available on demand following the event. Finally, we value your feedback and have a brief survey so you can tell us what you think about the event and suggest topics you'd like us to cover next. In a few seconds, you should see the survey pop up on your screen. On behalf of the Google Cloud Security team, thank you for joining and look out for future digital events.